In the midst of cruel winter, sometimes the line between humans and wildlife blurs. As a snowstorm howls outside, and the darkness of night grows more oppressive, this story begins with an unexpected encounter. A solitary man and an injured bear. Two wounded souls find their way to healing. This isn't merely a story about survival, but about trust and bonds formed in the most impossible circumstances. When Vincent opened his cabin door to find a grizzly bear pleading for help, no one could predict how this meeting would change both their lives forever. Wind howled through the dense pine trees of the Montana Valley, twisting their frozen branches into strange shapes. Snow particles swirled around the wooden walls of Vincent Stone's cabin, a wildlife photographer who now chose to live in solitude. Warmth from the old iron fireplace spread throughout the room, creating a comfortable contrast with the storm outside. Vincent sat in an old leather chair, while his Nikon D850 camera lay on the table beside him. The camera had become a bridge to his world since he chose isolation nearly 2 years ago. The cabin walls were filled with stunning wildlife photographs. A great deer in morning mist, a bald eagle hovering above Lake McDonald, and snow-covered ridges gleaming under the pale winter sun. Yet despite being surrounded by the natural beauty he captured through his lens, tonight the cabin felt empty, the oppressive silence reminding him of all that had been lost. Suddenly, a loud cracking sound of breaking ice jolted Vincent from his reverie. He turned to the frosted window, seeing shadows moving and shape-shifting in the dim light. Tall trees swayed in the strong wind, creating illusions of movement in his cabin's front yard. Then came another sound, a deep, mournful groan, similar to a dog's whimper but with a heavier tone. Vincent's heart pounded. It was very rare for any living creature to approach his hiding place in winter like this. The nearest road was 5 miles from his cabin, and wildlife typically avoided humans during snow-covered months. Carefully, he approached the window, his breath condensing on the glass as he tried to see past the curtain of snow covering everything. Initially, all he saw was a vast white expanse like a shroud enveloping the ground. Then something moved. A large, dark figure approached, crouching near his porch. The creature before him was a bear, but not the strong and majestic bear he usually captured in summer. This bear appeared thin, its fur disheveled and frozen, its breath heavy, releasing thin vapor from its nostrils. One of its legs seemed injured, twisted awkwardly above the accumulated snow. "Oh God!" Vincent muttered, his mind racing. It was a grizzly bear, Ursus arctos horribilis, a creature both admired and feared in this region. Usually they spent winter in hibernation, sleeping soundly in caves protected from storms. This bear was clearly in trouble. He stepped back from the window and walked toward the front door, turning on the porch light. Soft yellow light illuminated the shivering bear's form. Vincent opened the door slightly, cold air immediately slipping in, biting at his exposed skin. The bear barely reacted to the light, only shifting slightly and gazing at him. Deep amber eyes full of exhaustion emanating surprising vulnerability. "You're hurt," Vincent said softly, half hoping the bear would respond. The bear responded with a low rumble, more like a groan of pain than a growl. It lifted its injured leg and stepped closer with a limp, its large body appearing so weak and fragile. Every instinct in Vincent told him to close the door, to secure himself from this wild beast. Yet its labored breathing and careful movements stopped him. This wasn't aggression, it was an unspoken but clearly felt plea for help. All right, he said softly, more to calm himself than speak to the bear. Gripping a thick wool blanket, he slowly stepped onto the porch. His boots pressed into the snow with crunching sounds, stopping several steps from the trembling bear. Up close, the bear's condition looked more pitiful. Its fur was thin, ribs protruding, and frost clung to its whiskers like tiny crystals. "Let's take a look," Vincent whispered in a calm, controlled voice, trying to hide his own anxiety. The bear adjusted its position, lowering its head as if surrendering. That's when Vincent saw the severe wound on its leg, raw red skin with blackened edges, signs of worsening frostbite. "Oh, poor creature," he murmured, his voice trembling as he draped the thick blanket over the bear's back. Hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments along with your hometown, as this unexpected encounter between Vincent and the bear is just beginning with all its tension and wonder. The bear barely moved, only twitching slightly when the blanket's warmth touched its frozen fur. Carefully, Vincent guided it inside the cabin. Once inside, the fireplace warmth immediately enveloped the bear's body, which then collapsed to the floor, breathing heavily but steadily. Vincent stood still, his hands gripping the table edge to support himself. Before him, a grizzly bear now lay just steps away, inside his own cabin. Though the situation was absurd, no fear arose, only profound pity. From the cupboard, Vincent took a first aid kit and a jar of honey, Montana clover honey he'd bought months ago at a roadside stand. He placed the jar near the bear, uncertain if the creature could still eat in its condition. To his surprise, the bear's nose twitched, and with weak effort, it began licking the honey, its tongue sweeping the jar's edge slowly. "There we go," Vincent whispered gently. "You'll be all right. We'll get through this together." He sat on the floor beside the bear, his body overcome with exhaustion. Yet for the first time since the accident that changed his life, this fatigue didn't feel like a suffocating burden. Rather something different, a purpose, a spark of life reigniting within him. Outside, wind still howled, but inside only the crackling of fire and the bear's heavy breathing could be heard. For the first time in a long while, Vincent didn't feel completely alone. There was another presence sharing space with him, a living creature that somehow had chosen to seek his help. Dawn slowly crept into the ice-covered window with cold gray light. The storm had left behind a pristine blanket of fresh snow, covering the large footprints leading to Vincent's porch. He had added wood to the fire, but not enough to chase away the cold seeping into his bones. Vincent had spent the night in his leather chair, half awake, always listening for sounds from his unexpected companion. The bear still lay on the cabin floor, its breathing irregular. The blanket Vincent used to cover it was now wet from melted snow soaking into the fabric. The creature stirred slightly, amber eyes slowly opening. Still tired, but clearer than the night before. Vincent approached cautiously, keeping a safe distance, yet close enough to examine its wound. "Now we can see it better," he muttered, retrieving the first aid kit from the table. His hands trembled slightly as he sorted through its contents. Antiseptic wipes, bandages, and antibiotic ointment. These were meant for humans, but it was all he had to offer. "I'm here to help," Vincent whispered, more to reassure himself than the bear. "Try not to bite, okay?" The bear's injured leg lay before him, the wound gaping against the light fur surrounding it. Vincent worked with careful movements, wiping away dirt and snow still clinging around the wound. The bear flinched and let out a low growl but didn't pull away. "Easy," Vincent soothed, his voice gentle. "I know it hurts. Just stay still for a moment." He began cleaning the wound, and the bear hissed in pain as the antiseptic touched raw flesh. Vincent's face expressed apology as he continued treatment gently but precisely. After the wound was cleaned and bandaged, Vincent looked for something to feed the bear. From the kitchen cupboard, he found several cans of salmon stored for emergencies. He opened one can, fresh fish aroma immediately filling the warm cabin's quietness. Vincent placed the can several steps in front of the bear and stepped back to give it space. The bear sniffed carefully, then slowly dragged its body toward the food. With tired movements it began eating, chewing salmon slowly but gratefully. While the bear chewed salmon, Vincent leaned against the kitchen table, arms crossed over his chest, watching silently with interest. In Vincent's mind, this moment felt both strange and touching. He had chosen this solitude, distancing himself from the world's hustle and his own inner struggles. Yet this injured bear's presence on his cabin floor now felt like a bridge reconnecting him to something long lost. This creature's presence awakened something within him. Feelings he'd suppressed for so long, an unexpected connection to the outside world. Once the salmon was finished, the bear laid its head on the floor, its breathing gradually becoming calmer and more regular. Vincent approached carefully, taking the empty can and throwing it into the sink. A thin smile crossed his face as he observed the large creature sprawled on the floor like an exhausted giant dog. "You're strong," he commented respectfully. "Looks like we're both surviving in our own ways." Before we continue, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support means a lot to us. Thank you very much. Days passed in a series of quiet moments. Vincent kept busy with daily tasks, maintaining the fire, sweeping floors, and preparing simple breakfast of oatmeal and instant coffee. Occasionally his gaze drifted to the bear, who mostly remained still, conserving energy for recovery. By noon, sun finally broke through winter clouds, casting golden light into the cabin. Vincent found the bear alert, eyes focused toward the door. Vincent paused, noticing its sudden change in attitude. "What is it?" he asked while closing the door behind him. The bear only glanced at him briefly, then returned its gaze to the door. Its nose flared as if catching a scent undetectable to human senses. Vincent's brow furrowed, his heartbeat increasing. "Are you trying to tell me something?" he asked again. The bear exhaled heavily, making a low sound difficult to interpret. Vincent nodded, his mind filled with various possibilities. He began to realize that this bear's presence in his cabin might not be mere coincidence. There was a deeper reason behind it all. Throughout the afternoon, Vincent stood by the window, occasionally glancing at the bear. The creature's intense gaze remained locked on the door, implying unspoken urgency, filling the cabin with silent tension. "What's out there?" Vincent muttered to himself, not really expecting an answer but unable to ignore the growing intuition. As evening approached, the weather grew colder. The cold air creeping through the cabin most of the afternoon made Vincent increasingly restless. He kept trying to understand the bear's behavior, but the more he thought about it, the more unclear his conclusions became. One thing was certain: the bear was waiting for something, or someone. Slowly, the bear moved its large paws, the sound of its claws scraping the floor as it tried to stand. Vincent hurried to it, wanting to help, but the bear seemed unconcerned with his presence. Its focus was singular: the door. With difficulty it lifted its body, stepped forward, then stopped, turning to Vincent with a gaze that seemed pleading. "You want me to follow you?" Vincent murmured, his voice filled with both curiosity and caution. The bear made a low growl, not a threat, but persistent encouragement. It touched its nose to the door again, its gaze more urgent. Vincent had no choice. Quickly, he put on a thick jacket and snow boots, grabbing a flashlight and gloves. "All right, I'll follow you," he said, opening the door slowly. Cold air immediately attacked, piercing to the bone. Vincent tightened his scarf and thick hat. Snow crunched as they stepped through deep snow, following the bear's steps now more steady, far from the weakness it showed before. Around them, snow expanses stretched wide, only interrupted by dark shadows of fir and pine trees. The forest felt alive in its cold silence, with the sound of heavy snow-laden branches occasionally creaking to break the profound stillness. The sky above stretched in sweeps of purple and fading pink, signaling day's swift departure. Vincent maintained safe distance from the bear, his gaze alternating between the animal's injured paw and their path. Snow beneath them told their journey's story. Large bear tracks now accompanied by Vincent's smaller, hesitant footprints. Suddenly the bear stopped, ears tensing. Vincent froze too, carefully holding his breath. He sensed something else's presence, something his senses couldn't grasp but the bear clearly felt. "Where are you taking me?" Vincent whispered into the cold wind, his words disappearing as quickly as he spoke them. They arrived at the edge of a narrow ridge where dense trees opened, revealing a steep descent into a shallow ravine. Snow accumulated high on the edges, forming fragile banks that could collapse any time. The bear stopped at the edge, nose touching snow as it sniffed the ground. Vincent approached, heart pounding rapidly. "Easy now," he said, voice firm despite his chest tight with anxiety. "I'm here." The bear turned, its gleaming eyes catching last light remnants. It made a sound between a growl and sigh, then stepped onto the snowy descent, its injured claws sinking into snow. Vincent hesitated momentarily. The slope was dangerous. One wrong step could send him tumbling and breaking bones. Yet the bear wasn't intimidated, continuing to move, its large body driven by unwavering determination and urgency. Vincent finally followed, but his boots slipped on ice, forcing him to grab low branches to maintain balance. The descent felt long and careful. Each step became a test of endurance. Cold air stung his lungs while his fingers hidden behind thick gloves began to numb, struggling to maintain grip on rough tree bark. Finally they reached the ravine bottom. The bear stopped, lifting its head to sniff again, then with decisive movement walked toward a cave entrance hidden among large boulders. Vincent followed, breath emerging in white puffs that quickly disappeared in cold air. "So this is why you brought me here," Vincent whispered, voice soft. Of course the bear didn't answer, but its actions were far more meaningful than words. It limped toward the cave, stopping at its entrance threshold, then looked toward Vincent. Its gaze now clear, desperately pleading, almost like a human's gaze. Vincent saw the cave yawning wide, its darkness unwelcoming. With stiff hands, he turned on the flashlight. Light pierced darkness as he stepped inside. Inside the cave, air felt colder, silence almost suffocating. The bear was ahead, guiding him deeper, movement steady despite injury. Vincent watched as it headed to a dim corner, where a small trembling figure leaned against rocks. It took moments for his eyes to adjust to darkness, but when he finally saw clearly, his breath caught. There, two tiny bear cubs, no more than small balls of fur, shivering from cold. Their bodies trembled with each weak breath, eyes nearly closed from exhaustion. "Oh God!" Vincent whispered. He dropped to his knees, flashlight falling from his grip, spinning on the cold cave floor, illuminating the ceiling with dancing light. His hands trembled as he gazed at the two cubs. Mother Bear turned to him, her large head slightly bowing as if understanding his surprise, then gently pushed one of her cubs with her nose, touching the small body with full affection. Vincent's throat tightened, emotions overflowing. For years he'd captured wild beauty like this through camera lens, recording moments that spoke in profound silence. Yet this was no moment to capture in images. This demanded real action. Carefully, he extended his gloved hand, touching the fur of the nearest cub. Its body felt terribly cold. "They won't survive here," he whispered softly. "Not like this." Mother Bear made a low sound echoing off cave walls. Not a growl, but a tone full of trust. Vincent made a quick decision. He carefully lifted both cubs, tucking them inside his warm jacket. "I'll take them back to the cabin," he told Mother Bear, who immediately followed, seeming to understand every word. "You need to come too. We all need warmth tonight." The journey back to the cabin felt heavy and slow. Snow grew deeper as night approached, wind piercing to bone. Vincent held the two cubs tight to his chest, feeling their tiny bodies trembling beneath his thick jacket. Around him, the dark forest became silent witness to the struggling journey. Mother Bear faithfully walked behind him, her form vague in fading light. Despite weak and wounded, her protective instinct remained strong, eyes alert watching darkness increasingly enveloping the forest. "Hang on a little more, little ones," Vincent whispered, encouraging the cubs in his embrace. "We're almost there." The cabin finally emerged among trees, windows radiating golden light promising warmth and protection. The bear stopped at the doorway, its large silhouette framing the night. Vincent looked at it, voice calm and soothing. "Come in," he said gently. "It's safe here." Hesitantly, Mother entered, claws making soft tapping sounds on wooden floor. Her slow and visible breath formed thin vapor in air as she sniffed around, eyes examining every corner of the warm room. Vincent locked the door behind them, isolating them from piercing cold and the storm beginning to blow harder. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit subscribe, like and activate notifications. Share with someone who needs a glimmer of hope today, because sometimes trust can emerge from the most unexpected places. Thank you for watching till the end. See you in the next video on Hearts and Paws channel. Don't forget to subscribe for more meaningful stories about the extraordinary connection between humans and nature.